Welcome to the All Access Podcast from the experts at Tevis. Each episode, we'll talk about technology topics, trends, or solutions that manufacturers need to know in today's rapidly evolving times. Sit back, enjoy the discussion, and let us know what you think.
Hello, my manufacturing friends. This is the All Access Podcast. I am your host, Michael Thiessen, and I'm coming to you from our lovely studio here in Troy, Michigan. So we're here in Michigan. What do you assimilate with Michigan? I mean, probably right away to your mind would come the automotive industry, right? Because that's what we have here. We got the big threes. We got GM. We got Stellantis, or former Chrysler. And we have Ford. And so automatically your mind goes to, okay, Detroit, automotive, Michigan, and that's it. The topic of today is looking at, of course, diversification and looking at other industries. And so I'm extremely thrilled to have this gentleman here in our podcast that is going to lend a lot of insight into this other industry. So the industry that we're looking into is the aerospace industry. And what better person could we ask a lot of the questions to, but there's Tony Vernaci. Now, Tony Vernaci, I'm just going to introduce him here a little bit, and then we're going to hear from him. Tony Vernaci is the president and founder of the Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan. Again, if you think of Michigan, you probably don't think aerospace. And this is why we have Tony here. And Tony has been in the business for over, I'm going to say 30 years. This guy is just full of experience and passion that he has for the aerospace industry and the overall manufacturing. So he's going to give us a little bit of an insight of what Michigan has in store with aerospace, and potentially if you are currently looking at diversification and looking at maybe aerospace manufacturing, of what potentially is in store for you. So without any further ado, Tony, welcome to the All Access Podcast.
Hey, Michael, good morning, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're not going to be talking automotive today, so we're going to put that to the side. We're going to be talking about aerospace industry, and specifically about the aerospace industry in Michigan. So am I correct when I'm saying, okay, when we think about Michigan, we think automotive and not aerospace?
Well, I think it's pretty intuitive. You could go anywhere in the world, literally, and ask people, have you heard of Michigan? When you think of Michigan, what do you think of? And the first thing out of most people's mouths will be Detroit and automotive, and it's for the right reason. I mean, that is a rich part of our history, and has been a extremely important part of our economy for 100 years. But there's so much more that has been quietly kind of going on for the last 80 years that people didn't realize was here.
When I go back in history, and I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I look at the early onset of World War II and what Ford did in the aerospace industry at the time, that they were building airplanes at Dearborn Tool, or the Dearborn area. There's a very close connection with aerospace and the automotive industry, at least at that time, and then we move forward.
Yeah, it is such a rich part of our history, Michael, that it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't know it or have forgotten it. But you're exactly right, and this is where we will touch a little bit on automotive, because it is a really interesting intersection between the two industries of aerospace and automotive, and it's why Michigan is such a strong state and asset for the industry, the global aerospace industry today. But during World War II, it was kind of all hands on deck, and the president, was looking for manufacturers to step up and help produce, products and provide, support for the war effort. And the B-24 bomber was one of the topics, was one of the things they needed help with. And it was being built in California by a company called Consolidated Aircraft, and, well built, but it was, built, kind of like a Rolls Royce, one at a time. And we needed to mass produce them. And that's where Ford Motor and Henry Ford's engineers stepped up and said, you know what, we think we can show you how to build this aircraft on an assembly line, which had never been done. But they took them up on the challenge.
Yeah, with so many of our OEMs internationally, not just here in the U.S., there's such a close connection with the aerospace industry. If I just look at the BMW symbol of what that looks like, or the TriStar of Mercedes, they all come from the aerospace industry and then merged into the automotive industry.
Yeah, it's so true, and I oversimplify it, but it is truthful to say, if a company is making a bracket for a car, they can make a bracket for an airplane. Yes, there are different requirements, sometimes different alloys and things that they're producing it from, but essentially that is the truth. And what's so interesting is you hear today when we're talking about supply chain challenges and supply chain shortages. You have to really go back and put yourself in this point in time. There was no supply chain. So they were, and there was no factory. So Will Run was a field, and they in 4 years, they built 3.5 million square feet of a plant to build these aircraft. They had to develop the supply chain. They in some cases, a lot of cases, they had to do it themselves, be their own, internal supply chain. A lot of the men were off in the war. They brought farmers in from the fields. The women were put on the line. Rosie the Riveter, that's where she got her iconic name, was out Willow Run. And there was no housing, so they had to build housing to put people in. I mean, it's just everything from the ground up had to be done. And they did it in 4 years. And within 4 years, they were hoping to be able to build, I forget the number now, but it was like an aircraft a day or something like that. And but the truth be told, by the end of the war, they were building one every 59 minutes.
That's incredible.
And built 8,600 of them that went into the field to support the war. So
obviously, aerospace touches a lot of different industries. I mean, there's the structure, the manufacturing industry. Then you have the electronics. You have the flight crews. So aerospace is a very large industry to begin with. I just recently had the pleasure of going to the MRO of America, the Maintenance, Repair, and Overhaul Expo in Atlanta, and I was just amazed of how huge that particular industry is. And
it is.
It's incredible.
It really is. And, because if you just think about it, the requirements to build, if you just sit on an aircraft and just start imagining all of the technology, all of the engineering, the tooling, the components, everything that goes into, making an aircraft, it's astounding. And then when you consider that an aircraft, will stay in service for 30 or 40 years, and the maintenance is very heavily regulated, the maintenance side is not just a matter of building the aircraft and you push it out the door and you're done. The maintenance side of the aerospace industry is huge. So it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving. It just is incredible. And then you add on to that the growth of the industry. Right now, the industry is experiencing unprecedented growth like it's never seen before. And it was going on before COVID. COVID obviously, dealt a blow and a pause button to the industry, but it's back. And the same things that were driving that growth and demand before COVID are still here today. And so now, I think the latest forecast from Boeing and Airbus is roughly around 40,000 commercial aircraft is what they forecast is needed in the next 20 years.
Yeah, we did our own research here at Tebas and just compared aerospace to automotive. And of course, the amount of parts that go onto an airplane compared to the amount of parts that go on an automobile is just astounding. And of course, all of these parts have to be manufactured somewhere. And this is where the aerospace industry, with all of its manufacturing, they're running into a situation where they have so much work, they don't really know what to do with it. and they're constantly looking for vendors and suppliers that could manufacture these particular parts. And obviously they'd like to stay in the U.S. and have everything manufactured here in the U.S. for the aerospace industry here. In comparison to our automotive guys, it's no secret that a lot of the manufacturing goes overseas to China, some other areas. But from what I'm seeing is the aerospace industry really likes to have the manufacturing done here in the United States. Is that an adequate statement?
Well, it is, and for a couple of really good reasons. I mean, this, 50. If you just throw it up and say Boeing and Airbus are, one's got 50% of the market, the other's got the other 50% roughly. Boeing is a U.S. corporation and they build their aircraft in the United States. So half of that world's production for that commercial aircraft is done in the United States. Also, with China, you can't, some of this you can't take to China. Some of it is, and there is, activity in China, but a lot of it you can't because of ITAR restrictions with the technology. And then when you add in, Airbus has got, a facility in Mobile, Alabama now, where they're building the Airbus 320, which is the big competitor to Boeing's 737. So they need a supply chain in the U.S. They can't. If you did a spaghetti diagram, going back to my lean manufacturing days and Six Sigma days, if you did a spaghetti diagram of their supply chain right now, it's probably not the most efficient, and they need a supply chain in the United States. And Boeing has a supply chain team of a very large team that's on the ground in the U.S. trying to build that supply chain, and so it's critically important. And the demand is so high, like I mentioned, 40,000 aircraft. If you, just to put that in perspective, pre-COVID numbers, Boeing and Airbus each built about 800 airplanes a year. So, so that's, when you match that up to 40,000, the demand, it's incredible. And it's a mountain that they can't get over without growing their supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, there's the regular aerospace, commercial aerospace operations. There's then the private aerospace division. Then you have the defense aerospace area. So there's so many different areas that aerospace incorporates in their industry. It's just amazing of how many planes are being produced a day and how much manufacturing is going on. Even from our clientele that we deal with at the Tebas side, they're extremely busy. There doesn't seem to be a slow time for them, unlike some of the automotive industry where it's cyclical, where it goes up and down. The aerospace seems to be booming consistently unless there's some major snafu either in regulation or in such as COVID that put a little bit of a damper on the aerospace industry.
Yeah. And I should also qualify that 40,000 number is just for commercial aircraft. So, it doesn't touch on the defense, the military side. As you said, general aviation, so private aircraft, advanced air mobility, which is, the drone technology, short haul electric aircraft. We have our conference coming up in September, as you know, because your company will be there. The AeroOne conference in September. But one of the speakers we have is a gentleman who is the CEO of a company called Eviation, and they have developed an all-electric aircraft. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's a real live aircraft that's been certified, and he's got orders for, about around 200 from airlines. So, and then when you add in space, with satellite technology and all those satellites, we've got companies in Michigan that are building product for, the satellite industry, which is just exploding. Every part of the industry is bursting at the seams, and right now there's no end in sight.
Yeah. Let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about AIAM, Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan. So how is the association doing and how effective are you?
Well, it was a challenge starting because, so people most of the time, they've heard of associations. They don't really know much about them. we did a little benchmarking, when myself and our board of directors came together and decided this was a big industry and it wasn't really being supported like it needed to be from Michigan. And we started the association. We did a little benchmarking. It's like, okay, let's talk to some other associations. And much to our surprise, there's not as many aerospace associations around the country as you might think. And then when we tried, we could not find anyone that ever started one. And so it was, we found people that inherited what's been in place. So that was a little bit of a challenge. And then we just said, okay, our board is made up of small, medium, and large companies, different parts of the ecosystem, different parts of the state. And we just said, all right, what would be, if it'd be something that would be meaningful for such a broad range of companies like we have on our board, then it would be impactful for other companies, in the industry. And so we just kind of built it based off of what would benefit a small company, what would benefit the large company. And we came together with that. And so we started, it took us a few months to, work on our business plan and membership models. But when we started, going out and recruiting members, that was a challenge too, because, people, you go out and meet somebody and they'd say, you'd give them a little pitch and here's what we're planning to do. And they'd say, how many members do you have? And you'd get out one hand and you'd say, well, can I count you today? But much to our surprise, Michael, people got on board with that. And it just really started to get a lot of traction. COVID hit. So now we officially, we formed the organization in 2017, but it was at the end of the year. So essentially 2018 before we started recruiting members. And then 2 years later, COVID hits. And we thought, this is not going to be good. And we were really concerned. And we just kind of said, well, guys, we gave it our best. And, but much to our surprise, we actually grew 20% during COVID. So it has continued to grow every year. And that to me is, it's at least validation that people are getting value. And a lot of that is, we call it, helping companies and people connect, learn, and grow in the industry. And so we put on events like AeroOne that we're going to have in September in downtown Detroit. We do, probably 6 or 7 events throughout the year all over the state. And it's all about setting up an environment for people to learn about the industry, learn about the opportunities, and make connections and grow their business.
Yeah, I've come to some of the AIAM events, and it's incredible to see the passion of the people that are there, the friendliness that all these people have, and it almost seems like a very small knit family of manufacturers and technology experts that come together there. And it is really refreshing to see such an association have such an impact with a lot of the manufacturers that are members of them.
Yeah. That is a lot of the satisfaction when you, are in the spot where I've had the privilege to be for the last 6 years and watching this kind of develop. But to see an event, you were at our event in June that we had in Auburn Hills, and, you see an event like that, a few years ago, that kind of an event did not take place, and we held it at Renishaw. We had 140 people in their building for half a day, learning about their technology, learning about each other. You see people come in the door, and that a few years ago, they didn't even know each other, and they're greeting each other like they're old friends, and it's a really meaningful community that has gathered around this, of people that are interested in each other, and they're interested in sharing their story and helping people.
And the association is there to assist that and help that collaboration, that introduction of new technologies and new industries, so that they can help each other out. And really, I think that's what your association is bringing to all of these members, shining a light of what they can do, of what maybe they're missing. We have a pleasure of being part of your association, and also that Tevis can hopefully help them out as they're going down that journey. Now the AeroOne, the expo that you had such a show beforehand, correct?
Our first one was last year, last September, because like I mentioned, we've done a number of events. Our golf outings coming up in 3 weeks, and we do those luncheons, and we do a technology expo. But we made the decision. Actually, we were talking about it just before COVID, and then we had to kind of slow it down a little bit. But let's do a full up conference. Let's do a full up 2-day conference. Bring in speakers, experts in the industry, and bring people together. And so we did that. We were able to pull it off last September for our first one in downtown Grand Rapids. We did it. And, at the time, we were just hoping that, if we could get 150 people to come to this conference for a couple of days, we would call it good. We were also trying to attract people from outside of the state. So this wasn't going to be just a Michigan conference. We wanted to bring people in, introduce them to Michigan, break down those paradigms of what they think Michigan might be, and also introduce them, a little bit to the industry that's here in Michigan for the aerospace. And when we, closed the books on it, we were totally astounded. We had just over 300 people attended for the 2 days. And there was companies came from 20 other states and 5 countries attended. And so now this year, we just said, yeah, let's keep it going, and that's going to become an annual conference. And this year, September 5th through 7th, at the Detroit Marriott in the Renaissance Center. And we've grown it, we've expanded it, and it's there's been a very, very strong response to what this conference is going to be this year already.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at the amount of speakers that you have lined up, and it's incredible of the powerhouse that you have there of technology experts, of aerospace experts, of all of those people that are going to be there speaking, or at least are available to have a one-on-one conversation. Obviously, not only members can attend this particular event, also non-members can attend. Is that adequate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, last year, I think we had just under 1,000 people attend our events last year, and about 50%, it's about a 50-50 split of people that come that are members versus non-members. So yeah, absolutely. Because we're not, while we work hard to support our members, we work hard to support the industry, and we know the industry needs, more suppliers to get in. When members meet other companies, that's opportunity for them. They don't, they don't want to just talk to the same people all the time. They want to meet new opportunities, whether it's somebody that can do work for them or, potential customers. So we absolutely welcome non-members. About the only event we do that's strictly for members is we hold our legislative day in October, when we take 30 or 40 companies to Lansing for the day to meet legislators. Other than that, everything's open to non-members.
Right. What would you say to those listeners that are listening to the podcast that A, have never heard of the event before, and B, are now a little bit interested of maybe looking into it? What would you say to attract them to come to the AeroOne to see what the buzz is all about? Maybe they are an aerospace manufacturer right now and have never heard of it, or maybe they're thinking about maybe diversifying and looking into that aerospace. Although, who should those people be that should be coming to this particular event?
Yeah, I mean, if you just think, if you're looking, because the automotive industry, there's no questions, there's changes coming for the industry with electric and autonomous, and it's going to change how cars are built and the number of components and types of components that go into them. So people that are heavily invested, with their business in automotive are looking for ways to diversify, to get ready for that change. And we don't know today how much that's going to impact the supply base in the next 10 years, but we know it's going to be quite a bit. So this, like I say, this is an industry that the growth is forecasted to go, beyond what anybody can see right now. It's a very resilient industry. Airbus they have a chart from a few years ago that showed that regardless of the global factors, so that's the Gulf War, SARS, 9/11, the financial meltdown, air travel has doubled every 15 years, regardless of what's happened in the global economy. COVID, we're going to test it and see if COVID is changes that pace. But it's on record to do that. So if you are really curious about what does this mean for my business, that and you're going to get on a plane and travel to go fly to Seattle and meet aerospace companies or go to the Paris Air Show, we're bringing you all right here to downtown Detroit for you, and it's going to be a collection of, like you said, the speakers, but the audience that those speakers attract is a tremendous amount of knowledge and information that, when you look at it, it's like there's not going to be a more economical way for you to have access to that much information about the industry and meet so many people than to come to downtown Detroit.
Yeah, it looks to be an incredible event. I'm really looking forward to being at this show, because it's one of those shows where you really look forward to, because just the powerhouse of speakers, of people that are going to be there, of industry experts in the aerospace industry that are really having their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. And it's such a vibrant industry that you need to be absolutely part into it. Now, something you said earlier really attracted my interest. You said earlier that if you are a manufacturer of an automotive bracket, you can also create a bracket for the aerospace industry, essentially. And this is speaking right towards the companies should be looking at diversification right now. If they have not done that yet, it's an absolute must. You already said it, the automotive industry is going through an enormous amount of change, from the regular combustion vehicles now to electric vehicles. And there seems to be this constant change of shortening down their portfolio to smaller and smaller vehicles, which also means then that there's going to be potentially less and less work for some of those mold manufacturers or maybe die manufacturers that are out there. All of them have machines. Some of them that I've spoken to as a clientele, they're not that busy. They're relatively slow because of some of the changeover from some of the automotive. And so now they have a kind of like a fork in the road where they have to decide of what to do. If they don't have a lot of work, do they say, okay, you know what, we're going to close down business and that's the end of that company? Or that they start looking into, let's see what we can do in the aerospace industry. Would you recommend for them to look into this? Or is this where you would say, you know what, now just better close your building?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because there's so many synergies between the two industries. Whether it's lightweighting, the autonomous technology, all of that is so similar between the two industries that if you really want to continue your business for generations and leave a legacy, you're looking for something that has got stability and sustainability. This industry is it. And it's and some of it is not an obvious, I do this for the automotive industry, and that this same thing would apply directly to aerospace. In some cases it would, but you have to look at the similarities, and you have to work it. I mean, that's what we try to tell people is if you join and become a member or you come to these events, you've got to get in there, and you never know what you're going to learn through a conversation with somebody you meet. And sometimes it, like you said, or you were at the event we had in June, Michael, and Taylor Lohr, who I pulled out of the audience. He didn't know I was going to do that, but he came to one of our events back in 2019. He was a young guy member. He liked photography, and he just came to the event with his camera and was going to take some pictures for us, and met a guy that was designing a new really innovative boat propeller. And now fast forward 4 years, Taylor has now set up a building and dedicated it 100% to building these boat propellers. And the business that he's churning out is in the millions a year. and he's got equipment. And he just did that by showing up with his camera. so it's like, just think, if you just, come with an intentional reason of, just absorbing and meeting people, there's so much to it, but you've got to work it.
So companies that are currently in the automotive industry, they should not shy away from an opportunity to potentially look into what is the aerospace industry has in store for them. I know so many companies currently that are customers of ours that are in the mold making or die making industry that have switched their gears and said, you know what? I'm done with the automotive industry, or I'm not going to take as much automotive currently on it. I'm focusing more on maybe the aerospace industry and doing some more work in there, because it seems to be that there is a constant flow of work that is coming through their doors. And yes, there is some additional documentation that has to be done. There's a procedure that has to be followed. There's a process that is there, but they're willing to do this, and they're getting an enormous amount of response, because the moment that you have delivered the first part, there's a second part already in waiting for them to have. Now, those particular companies, you told me the last time we spoke that AIAM is in the process of building a foundation. Tell me a little bit of what does this foundation do, and what will it do? What is the intent?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because that is an important piece of our work that we're working on today. So over the last 6 years with the association, we've learned so much. We've grown ourselves as we've gone through this journey, but we've recognized that there's so much more that needs to be done to really help people and help companies get access and get into the industry. And as great as we our memberships are, and that companies like yours that have a membership that help provide the resources we need to operate. We know there's much more that needs to be done. So we decided to establish a charitable foundation. And I'm excited to tell you, I think actually maybe since you and I talked the last, so we did incorporate it's the AIAM Foundation. We incorporated it January 3rd of this year with the state. And we just a week ago got our letter from the IRS that they have approved us as a public charity. So it's officially a 501c3. And the mission of the foundation is to help individuals in either rural or underserved communities learn about careers in the industry and give them a path into the industry, whether it's through training or scholarships, providing scholarships for people that don't have the ability to do that on their own, but also to help companies get into the industry. And again, it's any company, but we're targeting companies in underserved and rural communities, minority status companies, because we want to help them understand. Yes, while it's good to get AS 9100 certification, the quality certification, there's so much more that you need to understand about being able to do business and be successful in the industry. We want to help train people on that. And so it's a supplier development program to help companies get an access as well. We think this provides so much opportunity for, throughout the whole state of Michigan. I always talk about the UP is, people don't realize, there's almost 36, companies that we know of in the UP that are conducting business in the industry or impacting it. So this is an industry that serves rural communities, and there's tremendous opportunity, and we want to try to, have an impact on that. Yeah. And what's different about the aerospace industry from automotive is high volume, low mix. So if you're on the Jeep Grand Cherokee program, they're going to build 400,000 of them a year. And so you're chunking out the parts, but with the aerospace industry, it is the exact opposite. It's low volume, high mix. And so companies where the automotive industry can say, hey, if you're going to supply my Jeep Grand Cherokee, assembly plant, you need to be, within, a certain distance of this plant because we've got just in time, shipping costs and everything. You need to be close. The aerospace industry is not that because it is low volume, high mix. companies can't cost justify building a plant in Savannah, Georgia to support Gulfstream, even though it's a good business. So they do it for Michigan. And that's the way the industry is set up is you can do it from anywhere and it doesn't really matter. And that's why this is so great for Michigan for, the rural communities, because that's the way the industry, that's just normal. That's just the way it operates.
Yeah. So if an automotive manufacturer right now, a mold shop or a die shop, wants to get into the aerospace industry, can they contact Tony or can they contact the AIAM to kind of maybe get some additional information of maybe what they should be doing, who they should be contacting in order to figure out what they need to require or what they need to prepare in order to do this type of aerospace manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The best thing I would suggest is, on our website. So it's AIAMnow.com. There's information there. We're actually in the process of redesigning the website to put more information out there. But there's also a contact us, and it's there's an info line where you can send in a question or a comment. We love making connections. We're not a manufacturer's rep. I always try to tell people, look, I love to get to know about your business, and I love telling people about your business. But at the end of the day, it's still your business, and nobody can tell your story better than you. But we love making connections, or helping people, kind of point them in the right direction. So, feel free to drop us a note through there, and we'll be happy to get back with you, answer your questions, connect you with somebody that can answer your questions. And that's what we're here for.
Right. Last time we talked too, and of course I brought up that, of course, Wichita seems to be the aerospace capital of the U.S., but actually you told me that, no, Michigan is actually very close to being the next Wichita.
Yeah, I mean, and my heart's in Wichita because that's where Cessna Aircraft is. When I worked for Textron, so it was always it was like a kid in a candy shop going to Wichita if you like aerospace. It certainly is for the general aviation market. Wichita is big, but we continue to build our database. And I mentioned to you previously when I started it, when I was at the state, and we kind of started to scratch around to say how many companies do we think there are. At the time, we thought there was about 500. Our database now is up to almost 1,000 companies. So it's here. This is not a build it and they'll come, field of dreams kind of thing. The industry's here. It's been here for 80 years, and it just has quietly grown in the shadows of the dominance of the automotive industry, and so it is here. And actually, a lot of the industry in Wichita, their suppliers are in Michigan. So you'll meet companies all the time that'll tell you they're building product for Cessna Aircraft. Textron actually bought a facility in Michigan about a year ago. So it's AeroMotion, they call it now, and it's up in Saginaw, and it's a machining company. So Wichita sees a lot of value in Michigan because they bought a business here to support their business. So there's no question that Michigan is a big player. Our mission is to try to make that where it's not our best kept secret.
There's some really interesting statistics that you have in your webpage, and there's two of them that stand out. One of them is the statistic that there's over 900 plus companies that leverage Michigan's existing aerospace supply chain. It's consisting over 600 companies and organizations currently. Now, I don't know how accurate that number currently is, but it's incredible that over 600 companies are here in Michigan, and there's over 900 plus companies that kind of leverage Michigan, saying, okay, I'm going to make that my home. Yeah.
And it's, what's really interesting is the big companies that are here that, again, I always tell the story, Pratt Whitney, part of Raytheon Technologies, 180,000 employees. Pratt Whitney has 5 plants in Lansing. GE Aviation, has, multiple sites in Michigan. And then when you think about all of the suppliers that support these facilities, Eaton, Woodward. I mean, you could go on and on. It's just a ripple effect. And so it's pretty amazing once you start to uncover it and realize what's here.
Well, we're ranked number 4 in the nation as aerospace hub, and we're number 1 in the Midwest for aerospace. So
that was one of the recent ratings by Price Waterhouse, and what we've found over the years, that's our aerospace manufacturing study. That number has floated up and down. We've stayed in the top 10 pretty consistently, but we've really come to the point, Michael, that we're while that's an interesting rating, we're not trying to say that we're better than anybody else. We're not. Ohio has a wonderful aerospace industry as well. We're not trying to say that we're better than Ohio, because that you don't win that kind of contest. All we're trying to do is shine a spotlight that's on what's already here and help people become aware of it. They can decide what's most important for their business. We don't need to try to run a foot race with somebody else, because you'll wear yourself out with that. Every company right now is if you said, what's your biggest problem? Most of them are probably going to tell you talent, access to talent, and inflation, supply chain. If you want to attract talent, yes, we definitely need to invest in our young talent, middle school right on through 4-year university, to inspire them and educate them on what the industry can provide for them in a career. But you need to attract experience, and talent moves around. So when somebody is ready to, they've got laid off in Seattle, and they're looking for their next aerospace job, or California, and they're looking for their next aerospace job, we want Michigan to be on their radar, because if people know about this industry, you will attract talent and you will attract business.
And we have a lot of talent here because of the automotive industry, or people that were in the automotive industry and looking to diversify. I could talk to you for hours because the aerospace industry is such an amazing industry to dive into, and there's such a pool of really talented individuals that are there. But the final thing, again, where can companies go to find out some more information about AIAM, and where to contact you guys in order to kind of figure out if they can diversify and look into the aerospace industry?
Yeah, so we're the Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan. It's a mouthful, so AIAM. But if you come to our website, AIAMnow.com, you can learn more about the industry, more about us, and a contact button in there to send us a request or a question, and we will get back to you. Come to one of our events. AeroOne is a big one, but we've got a lot of events that we do otherwise, so we'd love to see you there.
Tony, I thank you for coming on this podcast. I really appreciated talking to you, and I'm hoping that we can kind of help add some additional flashlights to the aerospace industry through this podcast, and increasing your membership and your capabilities of changing the stigmatism of automotive for Detroit or aerospace for Detroit. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys and gals, you've heard it here first. I mean, it is the time to diversify. It is the time to look at outside the spectrum, maybe things that you haven't thought before that you wanted to go into the aerospace industry. But I think right now, with the changing landscape here in Michigan, or with the changing landscape in manufacturing as a whole, maybe it is time to look into this. So again, go to this website, AIAMnow.com, and get in touch with the people that are there, can maybe help you. And who knows what this particular industry can bring to you. With that said, I thank you for listening to the All Access podcast. Hopefully this information was helpful to you. And if you have some further requests of what you would like to hear in future podcasts, please get with us at marketing@tebbususa.com. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining this episode of All Access. Please leave a comment or review with your feedback or what you'd like to hear in future episodes. To learn more about manufacturing technology solutions and Tebis's capabilities, visit our website at Tebis. That's TEBIS.com.